This video is based on a true story. In the bustling streets of late 19th century Chicago, two remarkable women were on a collision course, their paths about to intertwine in ways that neither could have predicted. One was a relentless anti-lynching crusader, the other a pioneering social reformer. Their meeting would not only ignite a powerful partnership, but also unveil profound disagreements that would challenge their deepest beliefs. The year is 1893. Ida B. Wells, a 31-year-old black journalist and activist, has recently moved to Chicago. Born into slavery in 1862, Wells's fierce commitment to justice was ignited by personal loss. 3 close friends were lynched without trial. Now she is determined to expose and combat the brutality of lynching at every turn. Chicago in the late 19th century is a city of stark contrasts. A booming urban center, it grapples with glaring social and racial inequalities. Amidst the towering buildings and thriving industry, the city also teems with impoverished areas, struggling communities, and a burgeoning social justice movement. Activists are pressing for change, driven by the desperate need to address the injustices that permeate society. Ida B. Wells's mission draws her to the heart of the struggle, fueled by the rage and determination born from her experiences in the South. She buries herself in her work, documenting atrocities and campaigning tirelessly. The turning point comes when she reads Jane Addams's groundbreaking essays on social reform. Addams is the co-founder of Hull House, a settlement house dedicated to improving the lives of immigrants and the poor. Wells sees a kindred spirit, yet she's wary. Would Addams truly understand the depth of the racial violence she fights against? Simultaneously, Jane Addams, born into a life of privilege in 1860, channels her education and resources into social reform. During her youth, a trip to Europe exposed her to the dire conditions of the working class, forever changing her perspective. She establishes Hull House in 1889, creating a haven for the city's underserved populations and a hub for progressive thinkers. As Wells wrestles with her mounting challenges, she decides to reach out to Addams. Perhaps Addams' influence can lend weight to her cause. Both women have formidable reputations, yet their backgrounds couldn't be more different. Wells's approach is fiery and urgent, while Addams's methods are more measured and pragmatic. In the heart of a city teetering on the brink of change, these two women begin a complex dance of collaboration. Early meetings are cautious, each bringing their narratives and perspectives to the table. Yet respect grows alongside the realization that their combined strengths could make an indelible impact. This chapter sets the stage, introducing the forces that shaped Wells and Addams and the burgeoning promise of their powerful alliance. Their convergence in Chicago marks the beginning of a profound, albeit turbulent, chapter in the fight for social justice. It was the summer of 1893, and Chicago buzzed with excitement for the world's Columbian Exposition. Everywhere, there was a sense of wonder, an outpouring of global culture, groundbreaking inventions, and grand architectural marvels. Yet, amidst the grandeur, a glaring injustice simmered. African Americans were conspicuously absent from the exhibits. This exclusion wasn't just an oversight. It was a deliberate act that deeply wounded those who had fought tirelessly for their place in the world. Ida B. Wells watched, disheartened but resolute. She was no stranger to exclusion and discrimination. Every fiber of her being screamed to expose this wrong, to rally against it. In swift, decisive strokes, she began drafting a pamphlet titled "The Reason Why the Colored American is Not in the World's Columbian Exposition," pouring her heart and fury into every word. As the pamphlet took shape, an idea sparked. Jane Addams, a pioneer in social reform, resided in the same city. Ida had heard of her work at Hull House and her influence within the community. She sensed a potential ally in Jane. Could they bridge their worlds for this cause? When the two women met, the atmosphere was charged with purpose. Jane listened intently as Ida detailed the pamphlet's mission. Although their beginnings differed, Ida's from the tumultuous South, Jane's from the relative privilege of Northern society, they shared a hunger for justice. Ida's fiery spirit found a counterbalance in Jane's calm pragmatism. Reaching out to Jane was a bold move for Ida, but she hoped their combined voices could make a difference. Jane, intrigued by Ida's resolve and the pamphlet's compelling argument, began to see the exposition's exclusion issue through Ida's passionate lens. Their collaboration was still in its infancy, but already it promised significant strides. Thus, at the dawn of their partnership, they faced the exposition's glaring injustice together. Their determination marked the beginning of a complex, yet pivotal journey that would soon challenge their convictions and reshape their understanding of justice. Ida B. Wells stood at the edge of a crowded Chicago street, her eyes meeting Jane Addams's curious gaze for the first time. In many ways, they couldn't be more different. Wells was uncompromising and fierce in her anti-lynching crusade, whereas Addams, the warm-hearted mother of Hull House, preached gradual reform. But today, as they sat in Addams' welcoming parlour sipping tea, their worlds began to inch closer together. Wells shared her story first, recounting the terror of lynchings in the South and her relentless pursuit of justice. Her voice cracked with emotion, reflecting the pain of countless victims forgotten by history. Addams listened intently, her brow furrowing with concern and empathy. She then shared her own journey, how she found solace and purpose in Hull House, helping immigrants navigate their new world. Despite their different experiences, a spark of mutual understanding ignited between them. "I see your fight," Addams said, her voice steady but reflective. "I can feel the weight of it. We must find a way to make people listen." Wells nodded, grateful for the recognition yet apprehensive about their differences. "But we must act now, Jane. Every day we lose more lives." Their initial dialogues often hovered in this delicate balance between urgency and pragmatism. They spent hours sharing stories, sometimes agreeing, other times clashing. But with every conversation, a fragile bridge of mutual respect began to form. Still, there were moments of tension. Wells grew frustrated at times with Addams's measured approach, yearning for a more direct confrontation with the rampant injustices. Addams, on the other hand, understood the power of strategic patience, aware that swift actions could sometimes alienate potential allies. Despite the early disagreements, both women felt an undeniable kinship. Their shared commitment to social justice, albeit approached from different angles, became the bedrock of their budding relationship. And as they continued their discussions, it became clear this complex collaboration held the potential to kindle real change. As their collaboration gained momentum, the pressures from society's deeply ingrained racial prejudices intensified. Ida often felt the weight of these injustices on her shoulders, pushing her to act with an urgency that was palpable in every speech and pamphlet. For her, every moment was a critical opportunity to confront and dismantle the horrors of lynching head-on. On the other hand, Jane, while equally committed to justice, believed in a more gradual approach, one that involved careful planning and coalition building. Her pragmatism sometimes clashed with Ida's more immediate call to action. A pivotal moment in their journey came when Jane authored the essay, Lynching from a Negro's Point of View. While it was groundbreaking for a white reformer to voice such sentiments, Ida found it lacking in immediacy and forceful condemnation. As they debated strategies late into the night, the differences in their approaches became increasingly pronounced. "We need the world to see the brutal reality," Ida argued passionately. "Diplomacy won't save lives." Jane sighed, her voice steady but resolute. "Ida, change takes time. We must bring everyone along, even those who are hesitant." Society's gaze was unyielding, scrutinizing every move they made. Racial tensions only heightened the scrutiny. The public expected a seamless alliance, but the reality was far messier. With each passing day, the stakes grew higher and the pressure mounted, both from their communities and from within. They stood at a crossroads, each grappling with the stark realities of their strategies. While they deeply respected one another, the increasing visibility of society's pressure began to test the very fabric of their collaboration, setting the stage for even greater challenges ahead. The sun was setting over Chicago, casting an amber glow across the city, as Ida B. Wells and Jane Addams sat at a small cafe, the tension between them palpable. They had been working together for months, driven by a shared goal of social justice, but tonight was different. Tonight, the ideological chasm that had been slowly widening finally revealed its depths. I admire your dedication, Jane. I truly do, Wells began, her voice steady but pained. But we can't keep pretending that gradual reform will address the immediate horrors our people are facing. Adams sighed, her eyes reflecting the evening's fading light. Ida, I understand your urgency, but radical demands often lead to backlash. We need a steady, calculated approach. The cafe's ambient noise seemed to hush, as if the room itself was listening. Wells leaned forward, determination etched on her face. And how long do my people have to wait? How many more lives lost before we see justice? Jane paused, searching for words that wouldn't come. The silence between them was thicker than the darkening sky. She had always believed in the power of incremental change, but Ida's frustration was a stark reminder of the pain that couldn't wait. I've tried to support you, Adams whispered. I've written, spoken out. But political realities can't be ignored. Wells shook her head, her voice breaking through the fragile calm. Political realities are built on the suffering of the oppressed. Their eyes met, one pair, unyielding and fiery, the other compassionate yet cautious. It was clear this dispute went beyond strategy. It was a clash of experiences, a friction between urgent action and patient reform. The cafe lights flickered on, yet the once warm and collaborative atmosphere now felt cold and distant. They both knew their collaboration would be forever altered, not by lack of respect or shared goals, but by their profoundly different worldviews. A packed audience filled the reform gathering, the air thick with anticipation. On one side of the stage stood Ida B. Wells, her eyes ablaze with determination. She had spoken directly and passionately about the horrors of lynching, recounting brutal stories that left the audience stunned and tearful. Her words were powerful, a call to action that rang through the hall. Jane Addams, standing nearby, watched her with a mix of admiration and unease. Addams stepped forward to speak next, her soft voice steady and composed. She acknowledged the injustices, but veered towards a more measured approach, emphasizing systemic reforms and slow, steady change. Wells's frustration grew with each word. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a reaction. Wells couldn't stay silent. "Jane," she said, her voice cutting through the calm, "we can't wait for slow reforms while people are dying." Addams took a deep breath. "Ida, I share your anger, but we must also consider the broader impact," she replied, her tone pleading for understanding. The tension in the room was palpable. Spectators whispered among themselves, the media scribbled furiously, and the rift between the two became starkly visible. Wells felt a surge of hopelessness, seeing Addams' reluctance as a betrayal of the cause they both cherished. The confrontation was front-page news the next day. Headlines screamed of division among social reformers, and public opinion fractured. Some saw Wells as a necessary radical, others rallied behind Addams's cautious pragmatism. Later, both women retreated into their own reflections. Wells, more passionate than ever, vowed to continue her relentless fight against lynching, while Addams wrestled with her doubts, trying to find a balance between boldness and prudence. The public confrontation had irrevocably changed their collaboration, yet it also amplified the urgency of their missions. Despite their differences, both Wells and Addams had succeeded in placing the brutal reality of racial violence at the forefront of the national conscience. Through their dispute, the seeds of change were sown, leaving an indelible mark on the path to social justice. Both women sat in their respective spaces, reflecting on the bitter confrontation that had shaken their worlds. Ida B. Wells, ever passionate about exposing racial injustice, felt a burning frustration that their public dispute had overshadowed the cause she championed so fiercely. Across town, Jane Addams wrestled with her emotions, recognizing that her cautious approach had created yet another barrier between them. The air in Chicago seemed thick with unresolved tension, as if the city itself were holding its breath. Ida didn't waste time wallowing in discontent. She threw herself back into her anti-lynching crusade with renewed vigor. Every speech, every article felt more urgent than ever. If not now, then when? She asked herself repeatedly. Her activism drew mixed feelings from the community. Some admired her unwavering courage, while others questioned her relentless confrontational style. At Hull House, Jane immersed herself deeper into her reforms. The pain of the public fallout with Ida lingered, but she believed her work could transcend personal conflicts. She might not have been as direct as Ida, but she sought to bring about change in her own nuanced way. Hull House thrived, offering services and support to countless immigrants and impoverished families. Her persistence in fostering social welfare was met with admiration and deep respect from her own community. Public reaction was as divided as their paths. Many acknowledged the strengths and limitations of both their approaches. Some lamented their fallout, seeing missed opportunities for unified progress. Others took sides, either supporting Ida's unyielding stance or resonating with Jane's pragmatic strategies. Their worlds, though seemingly distant, continued to brush against each other. Ida raged on, exposing horrors and demanding change. Jane focused on systemic reforms, influencing policies and nurturing vulnerable souls. Each in her sphere, they unknowingly complemented the broader movement. Their personal reflections brought clarity. Ida recognized that passion without allies often felt isolating. Jane realized that too much caution led to compromises that could dilute the cause. While they moved forward separately, there was an unspoken understanding. Both paths were necessary for the enduring battle for justice. Each woman, in her way, continued to carve a path of change, their legacies intertwined yet distinct, echoing a complex but noble journey toward equality. Despite their ideological differences, the impact of Ida B. Wells and Jane Addams endured long after their heated public confrontation. Wells's relentless anti-lynching crusade grew in strength and influence, becoming a cornerstone of the civil rights movement. Her searing exposés of racial violence captured public attention, forcing America to confront its gruesome reality. Wells's words became a rallying cry, her tenacity illuminating a path toward justice, no matter how treacherous. Meanwhile, Addams's commitment to social reform through Hull House continued to flourish. She creatively adapted her methods, addressing urban poverty, education, and labor rights with unyielding compassion. Her work served as a model for community-based reform, embodying the belief that systemic change begins at the grassroots level. Together, their collaboration, fraught with tension and conflict, left an indelible mark on the social justice landscape. It showcased the power of diverse strategies in tackling profound societal issues. This multifaceted approach would pave the way for future activists who would draw inspiration from both Wells's courage and Addams's empathy. Personally, both women grew from their experiences. Wells found strength in her isolation, embracing her role as an unflinching crusader against injustice. Addams, through introspection and community feedback, honed her pragmatic approach, balancing idealism with actionable reform. Thus, the legacies of Ida B. Wells and Jane Addams evolved, shaping a more comprehensive understanding of social justice. Their contributions, though distinct, were inextricably linked. Together, they demonstrated that the fight for justice requires not only the fiery passion of reformers like Wells, but also the compassionate persistence of visionaries like Addams. These dual approaches continue to inspire modern activists, emphasizing the enduring necessity of strategic diversity and unwavering commitment to equality. As the sun set over Chicago, casting a warm glow over the city, two remarkable lives began to intertwine in a journey of complex collaboration and mutual respect. Ida B. Wells, fierce and unwavering, had dedicated her life to combating racial injustices, tirelessly crusading against the horrors of lynching. Jane Addams, compassionate and pragmatic, had established Hull House, a sanctuary of support and reform for the city's marginalized. Their paths converged at a historical moment when social justice demands could not be ignored. Wells, with her sharp intellect and fiery zeal, reached out to Addams following the blatant exclusion of African Americans from the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893. She penned The Reason Why the Colored American is Not in the World's Columbian Exposition, a pamphlet that boldly exposed the systemic racism. Addams recognized the pamphlet's power and saw in Wells a kindred spirit, albeit one whose methods differed starkly from her own. Their first meetings were a blend of intellect and emotion. Wells shared harrowing stories of racial brutality, her eyes blazing with a call for immediate action. Adams listened intently, her empathetic gaze hinting at an internal struggle between urgency and her cautious, step-by-step approach. Despite early tensions, they developed a mutual respect, drawn together by a common goal, yet aware of the fine line their collaboration walked. As they delved deeper into their mission, societal pressures magnified their differing strategies. Wells pushed for swift public condemnations and aggressive action. Adams advocated for slower, systemic reform and sought to garner broader support from more cautious allies. Their debates were intense, their camaraderie tested, but the bond forged in their shared purpose held them together. Their story is a testament to the power of partnership and the necessity of diversity and activism. Through their contrasting yet complementary efforts, they illuminated the path toward a more equitable society. Wells and Adams, each in their unique way, embodied the transformative power of collaboration and steadfast resolve, leaving legacies that continue to inspire and guide the fight for justice. In revisiting the remarkable collaboration between Ida B. Wells and Jane Addams, we uncover enduring lessons, vital for today's activists. Their journey teaches us the power of unity and the significance of embracing diverse approaches in the fight for justice. Wells's fierce urgency in addressing racial violence stands in stark contrast to Addams's pragmatic and measured strategies. This diversity in tactics offers a crucial lesson. There is no single path to social justice. Effective activism flourishes when different voices and methods converge towards a common goal. Their coalition-building efforts underscore the importance of empathy and solidarity. Despite their contrasting methods, Wells and Addams were united by a shared vision of a just society. This highlights the need for activists today to look beyond disagreements, focusing instead on mutual goals. In the face of adversity, their relationship exemplifies how bridging divides can amplify the call for change. The persistence exhibited by both women is a testament to the power of resilience. Wells's relentless crusade against lynching and Addams's continuous reform work at Hull House illustrate the long haul of social change. Modern movements should be inspired by their commitment and the understanding that meaningful progress often requires sustained efforts over time. Their story also bridges the historical with the contemporary. Issues of racial injustice, systemic oppression, and social inequities remain prevalent. By reflecting on Wells and Addams' struggles, we can better navigate our own. The need for diverse voices and strategic alliances is as critical now as it was then. Ultimately, the historical challenges faced by Wells and Addams enrich our understanding of contemporary activism. Their collaboration teaches us the value of combining urgency with pragmatism, unity with diversity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Today's activists can carry forward these lessons, fostering solidarity and embracing varied tactics to create a more equitable future. As we ponder their journey, let us be inspired to continue the fight with a resilient spirit, united in our diversity, for the transformative power of good deeds endures through time.